I think there's just like a lot of processing the motherland, processing the transition and sacrifice to come to America. And, at first, when I start a series, it's in order to kind of understand a relationship, like a very intimate relationship. So community structure or like familial structure. And it was a way of like trying to understand that. So I didn't know it was going to turn into this like kind of inherited trauma story. And
you were just tiptoeing in and you were like, oh my God.
Yeah, I was like, and that's kind of the amazing thing about art. It's that like it expands the more you're like digging into it. And so for me, it was like, okay, all right, how do I like navigate through this? And how do I like even recognize some of the patterns that I'm mirroring or inheriting from her and what she's inheriting from her mother?
Welcome to What's My Thesis. I'm Javier Proenza, and today my guest is Kim Garcia, who I invited 2 years ago. And somehow, it's weird how these things, I don't remember why I got the idea that you were not interested, but you were interested when I looked back and I was like, oh yeah, I just didn't follow up. You were just super busy. But that's how that's how it goes with booking the show. I'm like, oh shit. I need a guest. I need a guest.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And then sometimes people do just ghost me, which is like I don't take offense to it, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, point being that I've known you and wanted you on the show for a long time, and it's nice to finally have you here, and nice that we're not whatever I imagined was going on.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. You're like, oh, I guess she doesn't want to be on the show. But
here I am.
Which is totally reasonable. Not everybody is required to be on my podcast. But
although there's a lot of people I feel like from the art community, I'm seeing like familiar faces in this podcast.
Yeah, I think the main thrust of this project is to kind of document the community. I at first I was very much in the artist run stuff, and then now I kind of have a handle on what that scene is like and what it's about. I think you probably do too. You've been around you've been studio mates with Amy McKay for 10 years, right?
10 years. We're having our 10-year anniversary.
Wow. And we're going to get into all the fun stuff that you guys were. You guys are like a power couple that are not a couple.
You're an art couple. Yes.
But, well, cool. Tell us a little bit about you, because I know that, I asked you, first I said Panay and you corrected me.
Which was Panay.
Panay. Okay. I've only seen it written.
Yeah.
But that is, what is Panay?
Panay is basically like just a Filipino-American woman or Filipino woman.
Oh, it's particularly gendered.
Yes. So there's Pinoy and then there's Panay.
Okay. Is there Pinoy X? Or did they not do that shit to you guys?
Yeah, I think Panay and Pinoy are like something I haven't heard in like a long time, like in like middle school or elementary, and I think it's transformed into more contemporarily like Filipino, Filipina, and Filipinx.
Okay, so there is Filipinx. Yeah, man. The descendants of the British Empire will not have any remnants of Spanish colonialism in their cultures, no matter how much we've grown into that. They need to wipe it out, which is funny. Well, cool. So I usually start with origin stories, your art origin story, which I'm very curious about. You also know a bunch of people that I know. You've shown with Harvest and Gather. Right.
Yes.
So we are crossing paths. We never really we see each other and we're friendly to each other, but we never really got a chance to sit down
to talk.
So I'm curious because I know your work from the experience of that, from going to open studios at Allied Craft Building. Are you guys still there?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. That place is blowing up. There's that Lattice Lab thing that's going on. That's crazy.
Yeah. We moved there 3 years ago, I think now. And when we first moved in, it was not as many artists. Mm-hmm. And then over, the 3 years that I've been there, it's exploded with a lot of artists. Yeah.
No, it's crazy. And then, okay, so tell me about your art origins. Were you born in LA? And then take me through the whole journey. Feel free to fill as much time as you want with all the details. And then the main things I want you to hit on are your first memory of when you were a kid drawing or doing whatever art stuff that you think back on and you're like, oh yeah, it makes sense that I'm doing this now. And then the moment where you went from being a civilian that just didn't think of themselves as an artist to like burdening yourself with that title and like realizing you cannot feel good about yourself if you're not making art. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Burden in that sense.
Yeah, no, that's great. Like framework. I usually get nervous when someone asks me what my origin story is.
Yeah.
Because then you're like, when did it all begin?
Oh, I only care about your art.
Yeah. I have a conversation with my friends about this in terms of thinking about where that origin is. Oftentimes people have it very, very young. And I guess in some ways I did have it young as like being exposed to the arts. I went to like this fine arts academy for elementary school.
You were born in LA?
I was not born in LA. I was born in San Diego.
San Diego, okay. But California girl.
Southern California girl through
like
and through.
The Beach Boys wish everyone was.
Yeah, exactly. But so I think I went through, I don't think I really felt like I wanted to be an artist until I would say community college. So like I went to high school and the only art class that they had was art production. And so I was at high school. And that meant that I was just making for art class banners for the football team to run through. Oh, awesome. So that was like the art class. So
did you get any conceptual conceits into any of that work?
No. I mean, maybe someday it'll like percolate. But yeah, so thinking about being an artist wasn't something I was like, I thought I was gonna be a hairdresser. I didn't apply to college. And then I went to community college just to try to think of like what I was going to do. And I've always liked the arts, so I just took art classes and started there. And then I was exposed to sculpture and museum studies. And I was super excited about like what kind of roles you could do in the art world. And I was really ambitious, and I really liked the community culture in a community college. Mm-hmm. The supportive faculty. And so, I don't know, the part I feel like is the first time I was like, I'm going to be an artist was this one piece I did as a collaborative project. And it was this artist residency that was like portable. It was like a 4 by 8 foot space that was like the footprint. And then it went up like 9 feet.
So it was like a little, like one of those like U-Haul pods kind of like just fake walls kind of thing.
Yes, without like the metal structure, was all just made out of wood, and then the walls screwed in together. And
they would take this from place to place. What is this residency called?
It was called Space for Two Artists. So me and my collaborator at the time, named Kevin Cow, who's like teaching in
Who you left for Amy McKay?
Who I left for Amy McKay, because I always have an artist partner. But Amy McKay and I have been solid for about 10 years. But no, so we started this residency, and it was first situated as like a sculpture project, because my sculpture teacher at that time, Wendell Kling, said that I needed to learn about structure. And he was like, you need to build something that is heavy and can stand. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to make a building. And so I situated it up with Kevin Cow, and we were like putting it together, and he's like the same size as me. So we're, like just lifting all of these crazy heavy materials. And then we figured out how to do lighting and electrical. And so we ran it for a program for like I think it was about a month. And we had a week rotation of artists and people from the community. So it was on campus first. And then we invited writers to come in.
You put on the residency?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I thought you did the residency.
No, I put up
that was your first, this is impressive. This is like a big undertaking.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would say, I was doing art, but, it was never like quite like committed yet. And then when I was like, oh, I'm going to do this, and then I'm also going to run it.
Yeah.
That was the thing.
That's an extra level of martyrdom that I am also heavily involved in. That's crazy. Okay, I was listening and I kept like, it didn't quite gel because of the perspective that I started the story with. But no, that's amazing. So then, wow, how long did that project go?
It went for about...
Space for Two Artists.
Space for Two Artists. It started, what was it? I think it was 2009.
Okay.
And then it went for just a couple of years. We moved it out to, there used to be this contemporary art fair in San Diego, and it was part of this like art lab. And so people would come in and just like, make art in the lawn of this weird hotel, because the fair was in the hotel. And then now it's resting in peace in my parents' backyard filled with spiders.
Oh, okay.
So,
wow. Our parents, we never talk about that enough.
totally, yeah.
Storage parents.
Yeah.
What it must be like to give birth to hoarders. You can't throw that away, Mom. That's like too important.
No, or maybe you inherited that trait from your parents.
Yeah. Oh, okay. That makes more sense. And they can't let it go. This is too important, mija. Although I don't in Tagalog, or do they speak Tagalog at home?
There's a different dialect we speak at home. It's Bisaya. So it's a southern Philippines.
Southern Philippines. So can you, or do you know enough to give me a rundown of culture? Because I've seen family portraits of you on Instagram with like very, very specific sleeves.
Yes.
And I've always been curious about that. And obviously I always like when people are proud, especially in this country, to wear their own, like we're immigrants, but that doesn't mean that we can't like, dance salsa, in my case,
totally.
Eat a lot of pork.
Yeah. Yes, pork.
It's Spanish colonialism.
Yes.
It's the thing that they could take on ships to islands. That's what the buccaneer is.
Oh.
A buccaneer is a boucanier, which is a spike that they used to roast pigs on.
Oh, yeah. That makes so much sense.
But that's French, so I don't know why I'm using it in reference to Spanish. But yeah, no, there's pigs all over the Caribbean. I don't know if there were wild hogs out here.
I actually don't know. In the Philippines, there's a lot of pigs there.
Yeah, but were they always there?
I don't know.
I don't expect you to.
Yeah,
I don't know either. But I know that because you can't travel on ships with cows the same way.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's an interesting detail of cultures that are not the antithesis of Muslim, but in that context, that animal has a different, it's probably still filthy on the ships and stuff, but it's just an interesting cultural shift. So I've been to the Philippines once. Before we get into more of that cultural stuff, how far have you traveled? How often have you traveled back to the Philippines? Because that is a brutal flight.
It is a very brutal flight. The first time I went was, maybe it's the more recent time was last year. And that was the first time I've gone back since 2000.
Okay.
So it was a really long time.
That's like 25 years.
Yeah, it was 20. Yeah. Well, 24 years. It was 2004. Or 2024. Sorry. But yeah, I think now going back as an adult was so different. And I stayed there for just only 2 weeks. And now I understand. I'm you can't see the Philippines in just 2 weeks. You really have to go months or a month.
You can't see the Philippines with just a car.
Yeah, you can't. You have to travel by boat. You have to fly. But I think that was such a really kind of grounding experience last year when I went. And I think it gets pricey because of the tickets for flying. But
it's a long flight.
It's also a long flight.
I don't know if the Pacific is bigger than the Atlantic, but I used to travel from New York, from Miami to New York and New York to Italy, twice a year because of my dad, because we lived there, we would come home for travel, and then we would get a vacation from the UN. And when I went on the plane to the Philippines, that's it nearly broke me.
Was it a direct flight?
I think so. Okay. I don't remember stopping anywhere.
That can be really brutal.
Yeah, it is. I thought I was tough until I did that, and I was like, oh shit, I'm just a little puppy. Yeah, no, it's pretty crazy. So then tell me about your recollections and your observations.
So growing up, I think a lot of Filipino-Americans have this kind of experience of not, and I'm sure a lot of immigrants actually go through this kind of identity crisis a little bit of rejecting the culture. And then as you get older, you kind of seek it out, or you get a new appreciation for it. And what was the question again?
Just tell, like, what was the experience of going back to back there, and then kind of re-immersing yourself in that culture?
Okay. So I was saying that because, you know, Filipino-American culture is so different. There's something that is like a proximity to whiteness. I think that's like valued. And when I was going back, I was like, oh, is this going to be the same narrative? And I think, you know, also it just being like 20 years or 24 years since going back and coming as an adult, seeing that there is like a lot more reclamation of like history. It's being, I'm sure with all the different presidents, I'm sure there has been a more pressing need to find their own culture or to like almost de-Westernize certain aspects. So that was kind of refreshing as opposed to the narrative of being closer to Spanish.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've talked on the show before that about the fact that like the people on the billboards don't look like the people in the community.
Yeah.
Which is like they look more, they don't quite look Japanese, but they look in terms of skin fairness, they do, which is an interesting thing. Like, I mean, I guess in the US, like not everybody's as beautiful as the people on our billboards either, but there's a racial element there in terms of how things are being sold to the community, which I would imagine is pretty upsetting to some of the younger people there, right? Like I think that maybe they're not boomers because they're not American, but people of the same generation in the Philippines as the boomers in America, like that same age group, I would imagine they have a different perspective on all of that, right? Like as you, because they probably remember. Well, I don't know if they would. Would anyone be around to remember the firebombing of Manila? Like probably, right? That was like World War II, no?
Yeah, probably actually. Very young though, likely.
Yeah, they were kids, so they only know the stories as a narrative from their parents. But yeah, no, I did see like there was this guy who did a performance piece in the downtown, because for people that don't know, old Manila is like tiny. Right? It's very small. And it's because a lot of Manila was just like, construction was mostly like thatched roofs and stuff like that. And then at that time, it was considered the Pearl of the Orient. It was the cosmopolitan place between the East and the West. It was like this like thing that no, it wasn't Curtis, it was MacArthur, I think, who was like, oh, I love it. And then MacArthur just ended up bombing. So all this history I learned from this guy that was a tour guide. Oh, wow. And he was like, he was just ripping into it. Like, it was not like going to see like, oh, the Romans, he would meet at the farm. It was like, the US bombed us. And then later on, he was like, I think I went too much. And I was like, no, I loved it.
Yeah, no, it's interesting to see like where the people that are left to live there, you know, there's a different relationship that's germinating and thinking about history, as opposed to the people that left, that there's some sort of acclimation into this Western culture that I think makes them have a different shift. Yeah.
So tell me about growing up in LA or in California. You how long before you moved to LA?
I moved to LA around 2017 while I was in grad school.
Okay. Where'd you go?
I went to UC Irvine.
UC Irvine. And then where did you do your undergrad?
Did my undergrad at UCSD.
UCSD. Oh, okay. So you did the
UCs.
The UCs.
UC circuit.
Yeah. The UC circuit. How was that?
It was great. And it's nice to like, there's a community amongst the like UCs, especially like UC, you know, the Southern UCs.
Is that how you're tied in with Harvest and Gather? You didn't go to Northridge, right? So
no.
That's kind of what they went from Northridge to San Diego. Yeah. So that's the tie that I see between you guys. Did you guys know each other when they lived up here?
No. I think I was introduced to them by their faculty, Ania Galacio.
Oh, okay.
So I think the faculty also kind of, you know, try to merge the communities. So that's kind of nice.
Yeah. And I would imagine in a place like San Diego and Irvine, you kind of have to drum that up as a professor as opposed to LA. You're getting left behind.
Yeah.
Well, tell me a little bit about your work, your practice. Like, what are we working with? Because I've seen spiky ironwork.
Okay.
And stuff like that. I think the stuff that you had at the show, the Harvest and Gather thing at OPAF was a little bit different. It wasn't as sculpture. You do two-dimensional work too sometimes?
Yes. Yeah.
Take us through it. Explain it all. Don't leave any details out. I'll ask questions along the way.
Okay. The work has kind of dramatically transformed. I think the first time you reached out to me was when I had a show at Faye's Gallery. And that body of work looks so different than this new body of work. And I kind of identify as a sculptor, but lately I've been trying on this like multidisciplinary artist kind of cap. And so I've always worked in a lot of different materials. So I always like to have a two-dimensional element with my sculptures. And before that, it used to be video.
Okay.
So when I was in grad school, I was doing video a lot. Drawing and painting didn't happen until after grad school.
Same.
So just
I took classes, but it didn't resonate with me.
Totally. And so, and then you're thinking, I'm sure like exiting the academic program, you're like, how do I make work without needing to rely on facilities and stuff like that? And so I think part of that, shifting into drawing and painting and other types of 2D works were kind of
as opposed to like computers and stuff for video and video equipment.
Yeah.
Is it because you could rent out stuff, but
you're right. But video is like, you have to rely on the technology. I got frustrated with the technology, and you're like making sure that video loads in this media player, and the media player doesn't like burn out, and then figuring out how to mount a projector somewhere. Yeah. So I was kind of like tired of that tech related issue. And I wanted to simplify, but I'm usually known to make like really big sculptures that are really flamboyant and colorful. And
flamboyant in what sense? Because I hear flamboyant, and I grew up thinking of associating that with queer.
It's like I do think the work is a little bit like awkward.
Okay.
The awkwardness of it.
But not flashy. Or flashy.
It might be flashy.
Okay.
I think my previous work was pretty flashy. Like I would have this giant, almost like cartoony object that was like a knot. I was also really interested in abstract ideas about lines as like forms of relationships or like tethers. And so a lot of it would be like this giant, massive sculpture balancing on this tiny cushion and then being hung and suspended in a weird way. So all the works were performing some sort of interdependency.
And like a little bit of tension in between the elements,
definitely,
right?
Definitely. And so that's like how my grad school work looks like. And then...
Which was, when did you graduate?
I graduated in 2018.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you're a seasoned graduate.
I'm a seasoned graduate, along with Amy McKay, my studio wife. We met there. But yeah, no, the work has changed. It always was a way of kind of like sifting through these... kind of like emotions or processes or like thinking. A lot of my practice itself is always like I have a community practice where it's like going back to the space for two artists. It's something that like engages the community, creating like arts facilitating. And then a lot of what I was doing in my personal practice was like working through all of those kind of power dynamics and social interactions during that time. My work lately has been shifting towards my aging parents. So when you had reached out, I had done a series on my mother's story, which is this like childhood story that we were like descendants from this like ancestor that was very magical. And she would tell me these stories, and I would, every time she would recite it, it would change. And I was interested in how her stories, depending on what state she was in presently, would inform how the story would unfold.
When you say state, are we talking dementia?
That
because that's something that I can resonate with.
Yeah.
But is that what you're speaking of, or states in like mood, happy, sad?
I think so. The dementia part, I'm like, that's the most recent project. But at that time, it was like states of dealing with intergenerational trauma. So
Okay.
she would have these trauma loops.
What are you comfortable talking about those?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I don't want to out your mom's trauma.
No,
it seems exploitative if you're not already comfortable doing that.
Yeah. I think there's just like a lot of processing the motherland, processing the transition and sacrifice to come to America. And, at first, when I start a series, it's in order to kind of understand a relationship, like a very intimate relationship. So community structure or like familial structure. And it was a way of like trying to understand that. So I didn't know it was going to turn into this like kind of inherited trauma story. And
you were just tiptoeing in and you were like, oh my God.
Yeah, I was like, and that's kind of the amazing thing about art. It's that like it expands the more you're like digging into it. And so for me, it was like, okay, all right, how do I like navigate through this? And how do I like even recognize some of the patterns that I'm mirroring or inheriting from her and what she's inheriting from her mother? And I decided, I was like, okay, my work kind of deals in like abstract ways. And thinking about my work, I like to talk about my work as kind of this new type of document or archive that's like not legible.
More intuitive.
Or thinking about there's parts that could be recognizable and not. I have this like theme text that I like always give my students. I'm like, Edward Glissant for opacity. And there's just basically thinking about, in order to grasp is an idea of like almost like conquering in some ways. And it's too complicated to try to grasp it. Like I'd rather have it be kind of something that's like coming in consciousness and also flowing in like not like a mess in some ways.
That's interesting. The understanding is conquering.
Yeah.
A lot of people want to conquer God.
Totally.
Or death, whatever. And it doesn't have to be God, just that like unknown. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I wish I had more to say or ask you about on that. Do you have any more to elaborate on that? That's a really interesting concept. Or maybe I should just leave it and not try to conquer it.
I mean, it's something that I've been really thinking through, especially when I'm dealing with like, I don't like making work that's like completely like self-referential. So it's like, I also think about that as a way of also keeping stories that I'm dealing with in the relationship private.
Yeah. And it probably extends some universality to the audience, right?
Totally,
As opposed, because sometimes things get so bogged down in the personal experience that it becomes unrelatable.
Totally.
Yeah. Whereas there's like broader emotion, like pain is pain, and if you keep it just at pain, you can maybe get a couple layers deep, but you don't have to be like, my mom is dealing with trauma from coming from the Philippines, which might sometimes naming things. I think that is a saying that like, it's also a concept in magic. Naming things gives you power over them, which is why the Rumpelstiltskin, isn't that the one that you have to say the name? Yeah. Like there's so much in there. That's really like an old concept, but a really interesting way you phrased it.
Totally. Yeah. The other part of it was like, what I felt like it was a coincidence in thinking about opacity. And then my mother's maiden name and my middle name is Fumar. So I liked thinking about it. I used to hate that middle name. Like,
because it's smoking?
Yeah. I used to hate it. I was like, no, I don't. And then, but then I was thinking, I was like, okay, so something is smoking. So something's either being purified or something's burning and like being reborn. And so I liked thinking about that as like a haze in the storytelling or even just like knowing what state things are in. So I think that's like, I think working with my mom in some ways was a way of like trying to understand myself too. And then, aging parents, because my mom, she had me when she was 40. So she's like in her late 70s. And my dad is also old as well. And so and recently, my series that I'm working on right now has to deal with my dad because he was diagnosed with dementia 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So dementia, I remember you were saying you had.
Yeah. Well, I hate to keep bringing it up, but I've been on like a bit of a grief cycle where I'm and mortality confrontation cycle. And one of the things that I was talking to my mom about recently, because she keeps telling me about like my grandmother. My grandmother is completely doesn't even remember the houses that she lived in Miami, which she lived in for all my entire life. she still wants to go see her mother in the old house. And one of the things that I was thinking about that, like, because at first I was like, when my dad died of a heart attack, I was like, oh, this was a while ago, but it was like, oh, which is better, you know, dying unexpectedly or like just kind of fading out slowly. And one of the things that I've been kind of noticing is that like my grandmother really only remembers like being a kid. And if that's the case, my childhood was pretty good. So I'm becoming less afraid of that.
Yeah.
But what comes up with you when you're dealing with dementia? Because it is such a complex thing. You're watching somebody who basically was the numero uno. What's it called? I was gonna say Ichiban, but I didn't want to. I was just gonna start using other ways of saying it, but then I was like, that might be a little too Asian for this conversation. But like that vulnerability, it's one thing when your grandparents or your parents they stop being able to like, you know, take care of themselves physically, but once their mind starts going, like, and it's such a varied experience for different people. So like what can you tell me a little bit about what you're coming across that might help me with my mortality?
Well, I think mine has been a pretty long process. My dad, before he had dementia, he had this kind of like a near-death experience, which I realized that I always thought NDE. I always thought it was like you died and came back. That's like just what it was. But I guess people interpret it differently. Like you just almost died. It could have been something very scary happened. But so my dad passed away for like 10 minutes and he like had this epic journey in the afterlife, trying to go back home to his his ancestral home. And then my mom did CPR and brought him back to life. And then ever since then, he's had short-term memory loss.
Yeah.
So the dementia is kind of just like what happened after his brain damage.
Yeah.
So I think it's been a slower process that happened like 20 years ago. And now this is like a different wave of like, okay, he's also old and then not remembering where home is, or like he's at home but not being at home, or like thinking he's somewhere else. You know, with aging parents, especially because I don't live in San Diego, but I'm pretty close. Figuring out how to lock the house so he can't like run away.
Yeah.
But now he's also like, we just had this recent episode where his health has deteriorated even more. So now he's not as mobile, but it's like a long grieving process of different states.
Yeah. No, you grieve them as they lose something every time, right? Yeah. It's a crazy thing. Okay, so then we'll get away from this like really morbid shit, and I wanted to ask you a little bit because you mentioned I want to ask you why you do going back to the extra level of martyrdom that comes beyond being an artist. As someone who myself is constantly dealing with why do I do this? You guys just did you and your wife just did Gallery After Hours.
Yes. So we you know, in 2020 there was a time where we were like, okay, what do we do? What is this new? We really thought that the art world was going to reset, like, and we were going to like rebuild it in some. So we had all of these amazing projects that we just tried to do all once 2021 hit. But obviously there's like life, and then there's, you know, jobs and trying to sustain yourself. And so Gallery After Hours was started in 2021. And we used to have this really amazing studio in Vernon. And Amy and I had, like, it was already made in this space, which was like...
Is Vernon in LA? Is that a neighborhood? Okay. Okay.
It's like a, you know, where like Night Gallery is.
Okay, that's Vernon.
And there's a bridge that you pass. Right on that other side of the bridge is Vernon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's like
near the Arts District.
Near the Arts District.
Like right near Cirrus Gallery.
Yeah.
Like right where the bridge is.
Yeah. Like that's still downtown LA, but once you cross the bridge, you're in Vernon.
Okay. So you were like, that's actually pretty well located.
Yeah, it was.
Especially if you want to go gallery hopping, which I know that you guys do.
We do. So we had a beautiful studio there. It was like a warehouse, it was dingy. And the person who was at that studio before had built this beautiful, like 10 by 10 square foot, like resin, like cube. And we're like, oh, this is perfect. We can now mount shows because it's in between our studios, and they can configure the space however they want. And then we had this roll up door, and we had this like private alleyway so we could throw parties or whatever. And we initially thought it was like be a great idea to like alleviate, like to not have full control over the curatorial process. So one, in terms of sustainability, and then two, to like give, power to the artist as well.
Sounds like asking people to pick their own topic.
It's somewhat, yeah, right. Yeah, sustainability.
I get it. It's like, hey, you guys can do it.
Yeah, no, I mean, the way that we're like, okay, we can be facilitators. So not like a curator, but a facilitator, very, very conscious about that, and saying, okay, you pick. So we're inviting you to come and do a show, but you can, the original premise was like, you can pick an art crush, a person that you've been collaborating for a while, or an art nemesis. And
I have questions about that. Finish what you were saying. Finish the pitch.
and then we'll like, facilitate. If it's someone you didn't know, we'll like bringing you guys together or whatever. No one has picked art nemesis.
I know.
I was like really excited.
Because you don't want to give an opportunity to someone you hate. I just talked this over with Lauren Goldenberg, Longoria, who just had a show with you guys as well. But it's just funny. When she said that, that is exactly my reaction. It's like, fuck that person.
I was thinking the nemesis could be like someone you're kind of friends with, but everyone keeps on comparing your guys' works together.
Okay.
And then you're like, try to like work it out, in the space.
Yeah. Well, how are we different?
Yeah. How are we different? Okay, or are we the same?
That makes sense. Because goddamn, there's people that have burned me in this art world. I'm sure you too. This is just the way of life. This is just the way of community. It's so funny when you tell somebody about an experience you had, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's happened to me. I'm sorry."
You learn.
Yeah. No, and you also learn that you're like the shit that people do to you is not personal. It's just people are shitty.
Yes. There's a lot of factors. You never know what's going on.
Tell me about the person that that you hate.
No, I don't.
No. This is PR. You can't. I'm promoting you, not bashing people. But it is funny to pretend that I was going to ask you that. Who do you hate the worst? Who's the anti-Amy McKay?
I don't think there is one.
Yeah. You have to put a lot of effort. I'm sure you put a lot of love into Amy McKay. I don't think you put that much hate into anyone.
No.
It's
easier to love than to hate. It's too much work.
Yeah. So you guys recently did one. Tell me the whole history of this. So you started off in that space in Vernon.
We started off the space in Vernon. We had 3 exhibitions. And the premise of that was that because it was a cube, we didn't want it to be a white cube. So they had to transform the space in color. And they had to, because it's like a 10 by 10 space. So it's probably like close to this size.
Shh, people think this space is huge.
Oh.
People come here and they're like, oh my God, this is tiny. It looks so much bigger.
It looks big. Yeah. In the videos and photos, it looks bigger. But I mean, but it's intimate space, right? So when you're like
20 by 20.
So when you're looking at work, you have to be mindful of like what is like, folding or collaging like with one another. And they've been like really great exhibitions. One, Tiffany Chow and oh my gosh, I'm spacey. I should not say names.
Oh, that's one of the first things I learned is that if there's a list of people's names that you have to shout out, don't shout out any of them because you were always going to forget one. No,
I can't do it. Okay, well,
I absolve you.
Absolve me. Olivia.
Okay.
Mole. There we go. Olivia Mole. Okay.
I was just stalling for you.
Thank you. It came. They did this wonderful exhibition where it had a film projector that was projecting in the corner, and they painted the whole space black, and they with gesso drew these Mickey Mouses like all over the ceiling and the walls and the floor. It was a gorgeous show. Cleaning up was really hard. I had to basically pull off the wall.
Yeah.
But it was it was really exciting to be able to be a space that could facilitate that type of like conversation.
Don't trust me. I know you hate every second of it, but you were like, oh, it was worth it.
Yeah, it was worth it. And we have great documentation. And so, when we lost our studio in Vernon,
they just didn't want to be a studio anymore.
The master leaseholder just lost the lease because the building wanted to be reclaimed as a textile building.
Oh, okay.
So, which is fine. And we found another space in Allied Crafts building. But it's not like quite the best space to host kind of shows, or like Bendix, I feel like has a functional elevator that our building has a very charming elevator that
is only available at certain times.
Yes, but it's 100 years old, so there's charm in that. But yeah, not that great for hosting. And I had met this group from a Tryst, I think that's called Tryst. Yeah,
Tryst Fair that's at the Torrance Art Museum, right?
Yeah, the Torrance Art Museum. And Franny and Moon ran this space called DMST Atelier. And they've been running it for, I think, 4 years, but then in this new location, like a year. And
is that an artist run, commercial? Where do they fall?
They are artist run.
Okay. You can be artist run and commercial too. But I realized the way I posed the question was erroneous, but go ahead.
But it's kind of like they're building such an amazing, they're another power duo. And they're actually together. And but
they're actually art wives.
They're actually art, yeah. So they have this space, and it's like a labor of love, as most artist run spaces are. And they're also running a residency there. And I think the proposition I don't want to speak about you just should invite them over, actually.
Yeah, I take referrals. Hit me up.
Yeah, they should explain that beautiful space to you. But I knew that she was getting burnt out. And I was like, most artist space, like I totally know that feeling. And I had like reached out to them asking like, hey, like I wonder if we could do like a more sustainable model, like would you be open to co-programming? Like I have a lot of ideas or projects that I don't have space for. Maybe we can share the labor and like give you a few months off.
Yeah.
So I'm always thinking about like, how do we make it sustainable? And
that's how you have been doing it for 10 years.
Yeah.
Or more. You know?
Yeah. And so she was into it, and I think there was other people of other like communities and artists that wanted to also do that. So this year was a programming model that was co-programming, and so we did after hours there. And the difference between that space from our old space is that it's much bigger, and we used to have that requirement that you have to paint all of the walls, but now we're like, you just have to paint the movable walls because it's just like too big of a space. And as like kind of this intervention into thinking about the architecture as part of the collaboration between them. So Lauren and Cara did the first show in a while, because I think our last exhibition was 2022. So it's been a while. And then we're having another exhibition in November. And we have one artist, and she's she's trying to pick who her collaborator will be, or the other artist in conversation.
Sup?
You never know.
No. What is it about doing this stuff that you feel you have to do? Because I also get it, like and when you said it was a nightmare to clean up, I get that. There's a lot of things about this that I do not like, but overall, I enjoy it more than I don't. But why?
Yeah, it's, I think that, being an artist locked up in like some sort of tower is like not the dream.
Yeah.
I think it's being in a community where like you're supporting one another and growing together.
Now you're helping me understand why I do this.
Yeah. And then I think another thing that I've noticed, like as I'm like, just making art still, that I've been more interested in discourse, like just having all of these conversations or this questioning. some people might have, like, I know when I've talked about this before, people think, oh, like grad school. But I mean, in some ways, not really, because I think it's like not with being within an institution or an academic framework or limited to that.
Yeah, or a commercial entity that is trying to keep up with market trends and stuff like that, which is a valid approach and is necessary. And as I'm interviewing one of those people, that's a lot harder. That shit is okay. Like I one thing that I've realized is that like being an a gallerist is like, you know, you can be an artist and have a day job. You can't run a gallery and have a day job, I don't think. You know, like a commercial space. Yeah. I mean, maybe that there's a way of doing that, but it just doesn't seem feasible. I don't know. Maybe I will learn that I'm wrong in that assumption. But yeah, no, it's crazy. I do think that that I agree with you. You know, if I didn't have people come in every week, I would just go weeks without talking to people, you know? And so this is more the practice on my end of it is like, yeah, I can come in, I can have people come in, have a conversation with them. It's gotten, the better I've gotten at it, the nicer it is because I have to do less, you know, and you know, like when I first started the podcast, I had a lot to say. Mm-hmm. And the more I hear myself every week, the less I want to hear myself every week, you know, but then I still have the place where I can say what's on my mind, which is very, very helpful, you know, and to some degree, you know, I think when I started, this was like the 2022 art world. I was in some organizations that were maybe a little bit less ethnically diverse than I was used to, like coming from a place like Miami. And so it very quickly got boring to like have all the women come on and talk about yoga and stuff like that. So one of the things that was a turning point for me, like in the 2020s, is like, I stopped caring about who I knew that I felt I owed an interview to, and just basically started interviewing who I thought was interesting, you know?
Yeah.
And in that respect, I've been able to get a lot of insights into LA. I keep saying that LA is, like I have always said that Miami is a psyop, but my God, moving to LA has made me realize there's like probably not a big city in this country that isn't a psyop. The shit that but I grew up in the UN, so I grew up really like in this diplomatic kind of well, like we had diplomatic immunity. I moved before I became a bad kid to Miami, but I have friends that are like, oh yeah, we used to flip off the cops and shit like that. They couldn't stop us from smoking weed and shit. And so, like I knew a lot of Italians because we were in Italy, but I also knew people from places that whose parents also were in the UN. You know, it was like a very international community. And there is nowhere in the world, nowhere in the US that has a huge Asian community, a huge Iranian community, a huge Lebanese community. There's like every culture is here for some reason. Yeah. And then you look at the history with all the gangs and stuff. The more I find out about this place, the more fascinating it is. You know, as hard as it can be to live here sometimes because of how expensive it gets and how sad some of the things you see are, you know, you just see like human suffering right out in the open. You know, you see people doing drugs. I still don't understand people that see people on the streets and they're like, they're doing drugs. I'm like, yeah, motherfucker, what would you be doing if you only had $5 to buy a rock? You know, like fuck off. But yeah, this is like one of the most amazing places that I've ever lived, and I've lived in some pretty cool places. But yeah, what's your impression of LA? Like how? Because I would imagine, do you have any, like, I tend to gravitate towards Latinos out here, but I know that there's a huge community of any kind of Asian that you want, you know? Do you hang out with AAPI a lot, or are you mostly centered on hanging out with Filipinos? Like where do you feel the most at home in Los Angeles? I guess is the best way of saying it, you know, like where it takes you back to that, like, oh, there's, I recognize those smells of what people are cooking.
Yeah.
They're using spoons to eat rice. I know some things about the Philippines.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's an interesting question. Like, I do think, I think in grad school, you get a community from that, you know? So I think a lot of, at least, I think in LA, there's also like UCI or UC cliques. So grad school has a community there. But in terms of I do also have a Filipino, it's no group name really. We're just toying with names, but there's like a group of artists that we got together that are Filipino-American. And then there's like, I try to attend these like AAPI, like network things. And that's like really massive. So sometimes it's intimidating. And, so yeah, there's like things that I gravitate. Like I think I feel most at home with there's different types of home. So there's like
with artists.
Yeah, there's like the ones that you grew up in, like they know all your baggage and everything. So there's like a familiarity with that. And then there's ones that you're like, oh yeah, you remind me of my like family when I was growing up. And so I think there's like having that merge and having them be able to oscillate in and out of the groups. I like a melting pot. So
no, you're 100% on point there. Cause there is even as a Latino, like there is something different when I'm around Cubans. Cause like we speak English in this very Spanglish way and we use the same, like, we use the same words. Whereas like not all Latin Americans use the same words. How do you feel about Spanish imperialism? Because let me preface it by contextualizing the question, which is that I am not, my indigenous roots are very minimal, right? So I probably come from the lineage. In fact, I just found out that the guy named Lord Christie that was in my family, like there's a British guy, Lord Christie, that my great grandfather. On my grandmother's side, on my mother's side too. Like they started Christie's, like someone in the lineage, some descendant of his started Christie's auction house.
What? Okay.
but just to give you, like, we were aristocrats. So for me, Spanish colonialism doesn't have, it's like maybe more romanticized. Whereas I talk to my Mexican homies and my El Salvadoran homies who have much darker skin than me and all of that. Yeah. And they won't even call themselves Hispanic, which I totally understand and respect. To me, that's not an offensive term because like, what am I going to hold on to, like 2% indigenous?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I'm like, no, I'm not Hispanic, but I get that impulse. How does the diasporic community process with Spanish colonialism? Because you guys have a little bit of the language in the names and stuff, but you don't speak Spanish in the sense that you don't, it's like an Asian community that has similarities with Latino communities, but doesn't have the language to bridge that gap. Totally.
So actually the series that I'm working on right now with my dad is following his like our ancestor, who is a Don Prudencio Garcia, who is half Spanish, and all growing up,
half Spanish, half Filipino,
half Spanish. And so of course the great grandfather was full Spanish. But when I was growing up, before me like digging into this research, the narrative I had was that my great grandfather was a Spanish conquistador.
Yeah.
So there was like an alignment with the Spanish side, especially when we moved to the States. It's always been like, oh, we got to find that book of like Garcia, and then his painting is in Spain, and so forth. So
it sounds like you're saying this impulse to chase whiteness.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
We had that too. That's why I know. That's why I know so much about Lord Christie.
So I think that so in terms of that, which in my family side, especially if they came to America, that's kind of like they're chasing that ancestor who's Spanish.
Yeah.
Working with this series and doing my own research as an adult, and trying to chronicleize like what is my dad's like regrets and what are the things that he's hoping like he misses in that, like in the motherland. And while I'm digging through history and thinking about the context, I find that my great-great-grandfather is this general who helped the transition with America's rule and like getting out of Spain. So the Spanish-American War. So I like thinking about that as like the first time of the Filipino-American identity was like kind of created. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of like documents and like weird tabloids of like his archive of what he did. So in terms of thinking about that, I think as I'm like discovering it, we're finding more things of like, well, what happened? What was the impact of the Spanish-American War? What did America do to help the Philippines? And then what parts did it destroy?
Yeah.
What did it? And, through that kind of research, you're just like finding out that America just really didn't change too much of the structure and kept it in this kind of like colonial. So it's like technically a semi-colonial, it's like a semi-feudal state still. Mm-hmm. So,
I mean, there's a lot of those.
Yes. Yeah. So it's just like.
Not all of them get as many guns as some of them.
Yes. Yeah. So it's interesting that I think about that as like, I'm trying to understand there was like this article recently in the New York Times, like last year and there was like a little statement that said like, for a country that's so abundant, it's plagued by hunger. And because it's just like an export country.
Yeah.
So that's something that I like think about, like going as an adult, thinking now about what is the impact of this kind of colonial aspect and how is that still sustained through America?
Yeah. No, and it's definitely like it hasn't gone anywhere, which is crazy. You're not going to believe this, but we've been talking for 57 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
Because even I'm like, oh shit, this is going fast. But I mean, we can go over. I'm not at all worried about it. But I just want you to know that if you're starting to lose steam, you can start hinting at that. No, I find it really interesting. I think that, I think it's a really crazy thing when you are from these places. And I think that is the there's so many Americans that are either red or blue are very much unaware of that experience and it shows in the way that they talk about immigrants. It shows in a lot of stuff. But one of the things that I find fascinating, and yeah, colonialism does destroy culture, but people don't get destroyed. And they still manage, like one of the most famous things about Cuban Santeria is that it was when African slaves had to assimilate into Christian theology, and so they just turned a lot of their gods into saints.
Yeah.
And now you have this thing that is uniquely Cuban and uniquely about that experience, which is really interesting. And I think one of the things that I've talked about before, I haven't brought it up because I wanted you to kind of lead your I didn't want to put my perception of the Philippines in the context until after you had expressed yours. But one of the things that I really noticed, and I've talked to other people about, I think Clarissa Abelarde was saying that it's almost like they want Filipinos to come over and become nurses. And there's like a pipeline for that. So that is an interesting way. I always talking about generational trauma, I try to tell my mom that the US benefits from the brain drain of the embargoes and stuff like that. And she gets very triggered because she has a lot more direct experience. The Cuban government was never my government. It was her government. So for her to hear that, like I had to apologize to her. I was like, look, Mom, I didn't mean to step on this. This is like really upsetting to you. And I totally understand why that is. But I do think that there is a benefit to taking all the people, like, if you're a Filipino and your biggest aspirations is to come to the US, because I went there, the biggest industry over there was the call centers because because people have American accents there. They don't sound Indian.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I think that really highlights sort of these systems of oppression that, like, we become tokenized as immigrants. We become, nobody gives a shit when Obama is deporting more people than anybody. Nobody gives, but they put on this big show, and now all of a sudden everybody's a fucking hero, right? I think you look at the No Kings protest, right? Like, I don't have anything against people protesting. I just think it's interesting that we went from calling this guy a fascist, which includes an entire government, and now when we protest him, we're calling him, and which he is a fascist. I mean, I think both parties are fascistic, but now he's not a fascist anymore. Now he's just a king, right? Are we saying no kings anywhere? Or are we just saying kings here? He becomes the target instead of the whole systemic government, right? Which is really interesting to me. And I think that keeps happening because people do not understand this. I think that when you have that diasporic immigrant understanding, and diasporic in the sense that you're fleeing situations that are not ideal.
Yeah.
You know, and before it happened here, that was I can maybe Italy. But the first country that I was aware of that I was in that had that abortion was illegal is the Philippines. They're hugely Catholic.
They're
like all
Catholic.
all that fucking Spanish colonialism. It's like, you guys are just us that don't speak Spanish. It really is fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Like, you guys are Latinos. As far as I'm concerned, they're really no different in terms of the experience and the migratory experience. So I just kind of wanted to highlight that. If you have anything you want to add to that, I just think it's fascinating first to hear you talk about the specific things. And I'm sure a lot of Latinos, you know, I just interviewed somebody, May. Oh, I shouldn't have started trying to say the name because it's Chinese. But I interviewed May, and I'll spare her the butchering of her name. She grew up in Jakarta.
Oh, okay.
As a Chinese minority Malay.
Yeah.
It's an ethnic group over there.
Yeah.
And that was anti-communist wars, right? It was an ethnic cleansing situation. The Jakarta method is something that is used everywhere. North Korea, Latin America, the Philippines, everywhere, which is the system of where you overthrow a democratically, even in Iran in the 1950s, democratically elected leaders, right? And then all these people, they're like, oh, we need to send aid to these people. No, you just stop fucking with their countries. They're not poor. You're just extracting wealth. So I don't know. To me, it's a really interesting reality that we live in as Americans who are aware of America.
Yes. No, it is definitely, even just thinking about the impacts of how things continue to develop and unravel in America, of thinking also like how that impacts a lot of what is going to be happening in the Philippines. Yeah. So, it's definitely, everything is tied together.
And it all points to the U.S. and the U.K.
It does.
It does. I mean, I don't even know that we're not still the British Empire.
Right.
But cool. Anything that I haven't asked you that you maybe want to get out before we wrap up? You don't have to. Just an option.
I don't know. I think we covered a lot.
I know, right? It was a pretty it went fast because it was dense.
Yeah, it was pretty dense. We're like everywhere. So I think we covered a lot. So.
All right. Well, cool. Thank you so much for coming out. I don't know how far your drive was.
10 minutes away.
But if you start counting how long it took you to drive here from 2023 when I first invited you.
Oh, yeah. That's a long time.
You've taken a long trek.
Yes, that's true.
Cool. Well, anything that we can promote for you?
Let's see. I'm having a show at DMST Atelier in October.
October? Okay, this will definitely come out before that.
Yes. Okay, so keep that in your calendar. Amy and I are doing a 10-year anniversary in July 19th. So
renewing your
18th.
Artist wedding vows?
Yes, renewing our artist wedding vows. And so, we'll have a big party in...
When's that?
Friday, July 18th.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
I know where I'm going to be there.
Yeah, you're going to be the party, and those who want to dance will dance.
Oh,
so
I'm from Miami. I dance.
Okay. Cool.
I'm a alternative party boy.
Nice.
You know, like 90s alternative music, but I also like clubbing.
Okay.
Well, cool. And then your Instagram?
It's Kim Wants Coffee.
Kim Wants Coffee. That's right. I was going to say Kim Garcia. I always fuck it up. So I stopped saying it.
I think the sensible one would be Kim Garcia, but.
Well, I think both. I think that Kim Wants Coffee will probably separate you from all the Kim Garcias.
It's true. There's a lot of Kim Garcias.
Yeah. There's not as many Javier Proenzas. Although there are some. I'm aware of them. And then thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this conversation, like and subscribe. It really helps us get out to more people. And I think I'm starting to feel pretty good about what I'm doing and getting a lot of good feedback from people. So help us out. Share it with people. Comment, subscribe. We got the Patreon. $5 a month gets you early access episodes a full week in advance. So while everybody's listening to this week's episode, you're listening to next week's episode, and that really helps us out. And by the way, I do artist talks now. Ooh. So if you need an artist, someone to mediate an artist panel and record it, I'm your man. I guess that goes out to everybody.
Ooh, that's good to know.
But thank you guys for watching. We'll be back next week with another guest and another topic that may or may not be art related. Thank you, Kim. It's been a long time coming.
You made it happen.
I need to go back and look at everybody who I think lost interest. You guys need to follow up too. I'm not attacking you. I'm just like, yeah, man. The weekly grind of like finding new listeners. It's so easy to just be like, oh yeah, what happened? Yeah. And then I just fill it in. I was like, oh, she probably wasn't interested.
That's so funny.
Yeah. But now you guys see how the sausage is made or not made. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it was a blast.